Use of trade names or commercial sources is for informational purposes only and does not constitute an endorsement by the United States Department of Health and Human Services or the Public Health Service. Views expressed by guest participants are not necessarily the views of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. CDC, our planners, presenters, and content experts do not have financial or other relationships with the manufacturers of commercial products, suppliers of commercial services, or commercial supporters.
Welcome to the Executive Brief for the City's Readiness Initiative, or CRI. This broadcast is designed to introduce our 36 new CRI cities to the concept and operations of CRI. CRI is intended to help major municipalities prepare for rapid mass distribution of drugs or vaccines to prevent widespread sickness and death from bioterrorism or other public health emergencies for which such a response would be warranted. The United States is engaged in a global war on terrorism. We have been victims of terrorism at home and abroad, and we are at risk of further attacks, especially on our major metropolitan areas. We also face significant risks at the hands of Mother Nature, especially the prospect of pandemic influenza. For CRI planning and evaluation purposes, we presume an attack with aerosolized spores of the anthrax organism, putting most or all of the population of a major metropolitan area at risk of life-threatening illness. This is a plausible scenario, and we take it seriously. The causative bacterium is easy to obtain. The technology for wide area distribution of the microbe and its deadly toxin is commercially available, and the requisite skills are readily mastered. In such a scenario, the first cases of inhalational anthrax would appear within a few days after the attack, and many more cases would emerge over the ensuing weeks. Once the symptoms of inhalational anthrax appear, the likely mortality rate would be around 50% for the relatively few victims who gain immediate access to intensive medical care. But for the vast majority of the population, those who don't have immediate access to medical care, the mortality rate will increase to upwards of 90%. The result would be a catastrophe of historic proportions. Other than preventing a wide area anthrax attack in the first place, the best countermeasure is distribution of antibiotics to the entire at-risk population, generally referred to as mass prophylaxis. Antibiotics taken before the appearance of symptoms can prevent inhalational anthrax. However, time is the enemy, and whether or not we can prevent a public health catastrophe depends upon two parameters: how quickly we commence mass prophylaxis and how efficiently we get out the medication. The more tardy the start, or the more prolonged the distribution, the more people will die. The City's Readiness Initiative was developed to help you increase the speed of your mass prophylaxis dispensing. To this end, the CRI goal is for project areas to be able to distribute antibiotics to their entire population within 48 hours of the decision to do so. This is an ambitious target, but the unforgiving nature of the anthrax bacterium depends no less. Moreover, a municipality that can meet this goal would be well prepared to counter other threats as well, such as terrorist-induced outbreaks of smallpox or plague, or naturally occurring emergencies such as pandemic influenza. Our program today will elaborate on the various CRI activities that are designed to make such preparedness a reality. A key to understanding CRI is being familiar with the CDC's Strategic National Stockpile, or SNS. While CRI increases the local capacity to deliver medicines and medical supplies during a large-scale public health emergency, additional medicines and supplies will be needed immediately. That's when the SNS steps in to deliver additional assets from the national stockpile. Every state in the nation now has at least one CRI city. This broadcast brief is designed to inform each new city and assist in your planning efforts. Successful implementation of the city's Readiness Initiative requires preparedness planning to ensure that project areas increase their capacity to deliver life-saving medicines quickly at the time when they will be needed the most.
and welcome to this interactive satellite broadcast, Cities Readiness Initiative, a national priority. I'm Sharon Collins, your moderator for this program, and we're coming to you live from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention in Atlanta, Georgia. Now, the goal of this broadcast is to assist city leaders and planners in understanding the goals of and their roles in the Cities Readiness Initiative. Now, these are the objectives of the CRI Executive Brief. Define the Cities Readiness Initiative. Describe the roles of federal partners in providing alternate dispensing methods and coordinated security. State 2 goals for city planners participating in CRI. Describe how CRI funding is determined. And describe 2 types of technical assistance provided to cities involved in CRI. Now, our panel will also explain how the Cities Readiness Initiative works, and will examine its history and define the roles that state, federal, and local partners play in CRI. And we will further explore CDC's roles and responsibilities in CRI planning, including budgetary guidance and technical assistance to states and cities. Now, we will discuss the 5 modalities for dispensing antibiotics to residents of your city, and we'll also examine the role of law enforcement and security around CRI. Well, we have a lot of important information to cover, so let's start by introducing our panel. Now, you already know Dr. William Robb, who opened this broadcast. Dr. Robb is the science advisor to the Secretary of Health and Human Services. And on the other side of the panel, Dr. Richard Besser is the director of the Coordinating Office for Terrorism Preparedness and Emergency Response at the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Commander Patricia Pettis is the CRI coordinator for the Division of Strategic National Stockpile, and Jean Popiak is a public health advisor with the Division of State and Local Readiness right here at CDC. Dr. Robb, I'd like to start with you. Could you tell us a little bit to start off about CRI?
I'd be pleased to, Sharon. The Cities Readiness Initiative, or CRI, is in alignment with Homeland Security Presidential Directive Number 8, the National Preparedness Goal, and is directly related to one of the top 4 national priorities, which is to strengthen medical surge and mass prophylaxis capabilities by establishing emergency-ready public health and healthcare entities across the nation. CRI is the result of efforts by the federal government in concert with local and state partners to increase bioterrorism preparedness in some of the nation's largest cities. CRI funding is provided specifically to enhance the mass antibiotic dispensing capabilities in CRI cities and their metropolitan statistical areas, or MSAs. CRI focuses on major metropolitan areas because the larger the population, the greater the potential consequences from a bioterrorism attack, and the greater the task of mitigating the effects of such an attack. CRI is a proactive program, not a plan on the shelf. It is a funding stream and a focus for state and local planners to accelerate the implementation of their mass antibiotic dispensing plans. We started the CRI process with 21 pilot cities. That number was increased to 36 cities in the second year of the project. These Table 1 cities were all selected based on population and threat. This year, CDC continues to provide CRI funding to the 36 existing CRI cities and is expanding funding to 36 additional cities for a total of 72 cities in a nationwide approach. We're calling these additional cities Table 2 cities.
But Dr. Robb, what is the rationale for expanding CRI at this particular time?
We believe the capacity building aspect of CRI is the reason for expansion. CRI has increased availability of federal resources to local areas. State health departments are funded to support the CRI cities, and that has significantly improved the availability of local resources. Don't you agree, Dr. Besser?
Yes, I do, Dr. Robb. CRI is already making a difference when it comes to all hazards planning. The initiative has enhanced communication and collaboration by making it imperative that resource providers and stakeholders collaborate. CRI planning tends to strengthen relationships between city, state, local, tribal, and federal partners. In addition to improved relationships, CRI assessments of preparedness planning have identified both strengths and shortcomings in response capabilities. Recommendations for improvement are provided as appropriate. The result? Stronger partner relationships and improved preparedness planning increases local capacity for all kinds of hazards, whether they are naturally occurring or acts of terrorism.
Thanks, Dr. Besser. But if I could turn back to you, Dr. Robb, what has changed about mass antibiotic dispensing? I mean, haven't the states been planning this for years?
That's true, Sharon. But since we first began planning, two things have changed: the amount of time to provide prophylaxis and the number of people who need it. Prior to CRI, our dispensing goal was 5 to 7 days after exposure. This was based on the incubation period for pneumonic plague, which at that time was considered the worst-case scenario. With that in mind, we were only looking at providing prophylaxis to the at-risk population. In other words, those who we believed had been exposed. However, since then we realized that weaponized forms of the anthrax organism present a much greater threat than we originally anticipated. Anthrax affects the body much quicker. Symptoms appear much earlier than with plague, as soon as 48 hours post-exposure. Additionally, aerosolized spores and crystalline toxin of the anthrax organism are easier to disperse and can be released over a larger geographical area. This realization meant that we had to revise our mass antibiotic dispensing goals to counter this threat. We now had to prepare to provide medication to 100% of a city's population within 48 hours of the decision to do so. This became the overarching goal of CRI. As you can imagine, this aggressive goal raised anxiety among many of our CRI partners. One such city was Cleveland, Ohio, one of our Table 1 cities. Mark Keeler and Matt Carroll tell us their reactions to the CRI goal.
What our first impression of the CRI goal when we heard about it 2 years ago was, how in the world are we going to possibly pull this together? The second thought that went through my mind was being able for a city to prophylax 100% of the population in that 48-hour timeline is a huge task.
Well, I have to say, at the beginning, when CRI was first brought to us as a project, we had some concerns about the realistic nature of it. It seemed like a challenge that might be overwhelming. And I think others responded the same way at first sight of it, or first digging into the details of it. But as time went on, as we started the process, started to dig into the capacities, we saw that not only did it make sense, but on the other end, at the end, when we had the process completed, we were going to have a tremendous resource and a tremendous ability to respond to a wide variety of emergencies. So initially, it does seem like a very daunting process. But as time goes on, I think anyone who's involved with it will see that it's really has some great value and can be a foundational element of a city's or an area's preparedness.
Well, Dr. Robb, it looks like the leaders in Cleveland have realized the value of CRI, at least to their overall preparedness, correct?
That's true, Sharon. Our ability to supply antibiotics within 48 hours to prevent large-scale casualties from anthrax also prepares us to respond effectively to other biological threats, such as plague and tularemia.
All right, thank you. Dr. Besser, let me turn to you now. We've heard about the CRI goal, but what are the objectives that will help the planners actually accomplish that 48-hour total population goal?
Well, there are many, Sharon. The CRI objectives that support the 48-hour goal came right out of the Public Health Emergency Preparedness Guidance for project period 2006 and 2007. These objectives include: create and sustain the capacity to provide antibiotics to the Metropolitan Statistical Areas, or MSA's, entire population within 48 hours of the decision to do so. Integrate command and control of state and local emergency operations systems to allow for effective communications. Institute a public information system to direct, mobilize, and continually inform the public about mass antibiotic dispensing. And ensure security measures to protect people, locations, and critical assets involved in the distribution and dispensing of antibiotics. Achieving these objectives can seem overwhelming to new CRI cities. Just starting CRI planning can seem like a challenge, but the planners in Boston found the process helped them plan for many types of emergencies.
I think the most difficult thing for any city or region about to embark on CRI is just getting started, because the scenario of an aerosolized release of anthrax in an area is this doomsday scenario that none of us in public health have ever had to deal with, or hopefully ever will have to deal with. But so you're dealing with this scenario that is so extreme in terms of prophylaxing everyone within 48 hours, something that has never been done before, that the process of getting started can be overwhelming. And so it's important to just take that first step and figure out which particular planning partners need to be involved, and then to take the appropriate steps to get those partners in the process from the very earliest stages. And then try to keep the lines of communication open, try to continue meeting as much as possible to move the process forward, to identify issues and challenges, and to work together to get those resolved. Probably the most positive thing that's come out of all of our CRI planning has been that it served to help us to build partnerships and to strengthen existing partnerships with our public safety partners and with lots of other agencies across the city and in the region with whom we normally maybe would not have such a close relationship. And so we feel like every minute and every hour that we spend working on CRI is time well spent, because what's going to happen during a real event, regardless of whether it's an anthrax event or one of the more garden variety public health response, such as hepatitis A or meningitis, one of those things, all the planning that we've done for CRI will come in handy one way or the other, whether it's the planning itself or whether it's the partnerships that we've built. You certainly don't want to be exchanging business cards on the scene of a disaster, and to the extent that CRI has helped us to build these relationships, we're actually quite grateful.
So the process of planning for CRI will actually help cities build partnerships. Now, one of the planning partners will be the federal government. So, Dr. Robb, can you help us understand the federal responsibilities for the Cities Readiness Initiative?
Certainly, Sharon. The federal government is responsible for 5 CRI functions: providing funding, providing formal guidance, offering technical assistance, promulgating exemplary practices and lessons learned, and developing performance measures.
Dr. Robb, let me go back to that first responsibility, providing funding. What was the formula for the CRI funding in the project period 2006 to 2007?
The current project period runs from August 31, 2006 through August 30, 2007. The 36 Table 1 MSAs are funded based on population, and the 36 new Table 2 MSAs were given a base funding of $200,000. I know that several metropolitan areas have raised concern over how funds and authority should be distributed in cities that spread into multiple counties. But the cooperative agreement itself requires that the funds go to the states. The fact that the funds will flow through the regular cooperative agreements gives our state colleagues the opportunity to help shape CRI into a specific multi-jurisdictional solution that makes sense for each area. The target cities are the anchor, based on the population. But planning of the initiative needs to take into account all of the jurisdictional players to achieve the best public health solution. One example of this is the state of Ohio, where public health leaders found that they could use guidance from the CDC to dispense their CRI funds through existing grants. Mark Keeler will tell us about that and give some advice to other state planners.
We did receive the guidance out of CDC, and it was directed to the state to help Cleveland become prepared for the City Readiness Initiative. What we did was create a grant infrastructure through a grant system that we already had in place to place money in the local health departments. It's called a PHI grant, or a Public Health Infrastructure Grant, that we have with Ohio Department of Health. I wrote an addendum to that particular grant system and placed the City Readiness Initiative in that area. I created the grant requirements for the City of Cleveland to conform to the CRI. I identified the roles and responsibility of both the city as well as the state. So people weren't really running around trying to recreate something that was already there. Simply use the infrastructure that you had in place, build the relationships in a better manner or a more robust manner, so that people understand the timelines that we have to conform to, and really what our main objective is of getting the prophylax out to 100% of the population. My advice to other state coordinators for the City Readiness Initiative approach would be take it in perspective, understand the objective of the project, look at your own infrastructure and your own stockpile program, and see how that you can use that to make that system work more smoothly. Understand the infrastructure of the city that is the CRI designee and how they work internally. Find the middle ground that you both agree on as to where that actual handshake takes place so that they can do their job. Give them the guidance that they need. You're going to have to be with them. You're going to have regular meetings. You're going to have conference calls so that everybody's on the same page for this project. It is a huge project. It will take time to mature. Once you start to designate the roles and responsibilities of the locals as well as the state, it really helps to put things in perspective. You will have to spend time with your city, but it's time well spent so that you understand their infrastructure and you understand how we can all respond together.
Well, you heard Mark talk about the roles and responsibilities of state and local government in Ohio, but let's get back to the federal responsibilities. Now, Dr. Robb told us about funding, but Dr. Besser, doesn't CDC play a major role in CRI?
That's right, Sharon. CDC provides formal CRI guidance and technical assistance. We work closely with states and cities, in person and on the ground. CDC also provides subject matter expertise on preparedness activities such as laboratory testing, epidemiology, surveillance, and public health informatics. In addition, CDC takes exemplary practices and the lessons learned in one area and uses them to benefit other cities. Moreover, this function helps us and our local and state partners develop performance goals, standards, and measures, which in turn help us to assess how prepared we are and how far we have to go in our planning efforts. CDC will also soon provide guidance on conducting drills and exercises. CDC's Coordinating Office for Terrorism Preparedness and Emergency Response, COTPER, serves as a central point of contact for the key stakeholders and acts as a clearinghouse and central communications voice for the agency's preparedness activities. COTPER also provides strategic direction to the agency. We direct CDC's emergency response operations through the Director's Emergency Operations Center, and we maintain and administer the Strategic National Stockpile, SNS, which is how most people know about us.
Well, we've touched on the federal government's role. So what is the state's role, Dr. Besser? I mean, I thought states were responsible for their own cities.
That's right, Sharon. The states are responsible for ensuring that they and their local entities are part of the integrated planning for preparedness as described in the National Incident Management System. Most states retain responsibility for critical functions, such as requesting SNS materiel, provision of warehouse sites, and distribution of materiel to dispensing locations. Another state responsibility is to disperse funds from the CDC Public Health Emergency Preparedness Cooperative Agreement to the local level, as we discussed earlier. The states also provide oversight and guidance for local programs. Part of that includes coordinating state plans and local plans. Many states have also realized that it's important to integrate their CRI planning with other states. For example, Ohio has found that it may be necessary to share assets with their neighboring states. I'll let Mark Keeler discuss his experiences.
Ohio borders Michigan, Indiana, Kentucky, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania. For the Strategic National Stockpile program, I've worked with all those states. We have met a round table so that we understand each other's infrastructure and how we can support each other cross-border. Currently, Ohio has a memorandum of agreement with the state of Indiana for the stockpile program, and points of dispensing sites are shared between the counties that border our states, as well as I've worked with the SNS coordinator in Indiana on how we can deliver material to a site in Indiana for them to have the ability to move forward, and vice versa. So that way, if Ohio has federal assets from the stockpile program in our possession, we have the ability to know where their reception site is, that we could send them material to be able to support a situation. They also know where our sites are that we could ask for support as well. There's always law enforcement concern when you start moving outside of their jurisdiction. When I approached the Ohio State Highway Patrol, which is our primary security forces in Ohio, they have a full buy-in to support the Strategic National Stockpile from the Director of our Public Safety. They've assured us that when we have to go outside the borders of Ohio, that they can go up to a certain distance and still have the authority to secure the asset for Ohio. We simply meet up with the state patrols of the state that we're going into. That way we have a joint effort and joint security force moving into wherever that delivery site is. Naturally, once we get there, we sign over the asset to that other state, and it becomes their possession now.
Okay, we've discussed federal and state responsibilities, but Dr. Robb, let me throw it back into your court. What are the local responsibilities?
The first local responsibility is to develop a plan to meet the 48-hour dispensing goal. Another critical local responsibility is forging partnerships across the metropolitan statistical area. Health departments, law enforcement agencies, emergency responders, healthcare providers, and others are all important players, and each have vital roles.
All right, Dr. Robb, thank you. Now, the Cleveland Department of Public Health has successfully forged partnerships. Let's watch as they discuss their strategy, identify their partners and other agencies, and realize the benefit of strengthening these relationships.
When we started to reach out to other partners for the CRI process and develop our plan, we explained what CRI does and what it allows a city or a region to do. And I think the people at the table in public safety or in related areas or hospital associations, I think they immediately saw the value to having this capacity within a city or within the region as well. Right now, there is, before CRI started, there was no way to reach the entire population with prophylaxis or medical response. Being able to explain that as the vision for the CRI process, I think that was a real hook to people. I think when our partners saw that that was the bottom line or the end product of this process, I think they immediately realized, well, this is something we need to be a part of, and this is something that we're all going to benefit from when or if the time comes.
The key partnerships that I believe really benefited to the CRI grant are our streets division, our internal streets. Traffic engineering, the Commissioner of Traffic Engineering was instrumental in providing us the street closures for our pods and giving us guidance on any other activities related to traffic engineering. Our water department, utilities department, our Cleveland Public Power, all of these commissioners, deputy commissioners were instrumental in buying into this in addition to serving as pod managers.
The key partnerships that we have found that make CRI a success within the city of Cleveland, or at least that I have worked closely with, have been the Office of Homeland Security, Public Safety, interactions with the mayor's office, interactions with traffic engineering, the legal department, all of these departments and offices that really come together to support the efforts that we have, to answer the questions we have on a short minute notice.
In our community, we've had, in the public health community and other partners that we worked with, we've had a lot of opportunity to work together. And CRI has given us the ability to strengthen those relationships tremendously. And the one thing I would point out about that is CRI is good in and of itself. It's emergency preparedness, it's a great thing to have, but it also has increased our overall ability and our overall capacity as a public health department. Not only internally, but working with our outside partners as well. We have something left after the CRI process or as part of the CRI process that goes much beyond just the project per se. And that value to us and to our partners and to the relationships that we've built, it's hard to measure. And it's something that we are very pleased and fortunate to have been able to participate in.
Well, now, Chicago had a very different experience because all of the city departments fall under the office of the mayor. So let's hear how Chicago developed partnerships and got the backing of key city officials.
We were very fortunate when we got our CRI briefing that our chief of staff for the city of Chicago sent out a charge to all city departments after the CRI briefing that they must attend a mandatory meeting, a follow-up meeting that the Office of Emergency Management, in combination with the mayor's office, led.
All the important agencies that need to sit at the table all come under one mayor. It caught his attention. It caught the attention of our Office of Emergency Management and our Chief of Staff, and that they took that very seriously and called cabinet level meetings and said, this is important, it's important for the city of Chicago. It is a key piece that we need to strategize and plan for in order to make our city safe. The other key thing that I think that we've had in our corner is that the people at the table that are doing the planning are the decision makers. It's not people that then have to go back and run it up the flagpole to 3 or 4 other people. These are people who are decision makers. It's, deputy commissioners and high-ranking police and fire officials and key decision makers at our park district as well as our school. So the right people are at the table. It's not just the table. It's the right people that are at the table. And the mayor having the backing saying, you will plan. It's a responsibility that I think we all take very seriously to the citizens of the city of Chicago.
Now, Chicago planners also found that getting support from the very top of the political ladder was the best thing to kickstart their CRI process. Mayor Richard Daley will tell us how CRI helps protect the first responders and citizens of Chicago and brought public health to the emergency preparedness planning table.
The Readiness program allows us to take a number of agencies together, first responders usually, so that they understand the situation they're getting into. We have to protect them in regards to their health as well as the citizens' health.
I think that one of the things about public health and public health preparedness is that public health people have not traditionally been at the table with traditional first responders, the police, the fire, the OEMCs, Office of Emergency Managements of the world. So kind of wedging yourself into the table in and of itself and saying we are a legitimate public health first responder, a legitimate first responder, was a bit of a stretch. And it was a while, I think, before traditional first responding agencies really kind of understood the value of public health and what we brought to the table and what was particularly unique that we could provide as a first responder. So you had to kind of get over that hump first. And then kind of the second challenge was then engaging the Office of Emergency Management and kind of figuring out who was the agency that's really going to help us coordinate this and help bring those other partners to the table, all of which who needed to come to the table in order to create this plan. And it really is Office of Emergency Management. And I have to give them a lot of credit because they took this very seriously. And to this day, we're still actively planning with all of our response partners.
So, Dr. Robb, I would imagine that it will be important in some communities to obtain memoranda of understanding or MOUs to ensure that each organization is aware of the response.
That's right, Sharon. And the Cleveland Department of Public Health has used MOUs to create a strong partnership with other agencies in the city and other health departments throughout the region.
We do have memorandum of understandings in place, MOUs. We have them with the Red Cross. We have them with the City of Cleveland Municipal School District. We have them with Cuyahoga County Board of Health, who is one of our great partners. We couldn't have done it without them. They've been our partner from day one.
One of our main areas that we have an MOU is within Cuyahoga County is the City of Cleveland. Within Cuyahoga County alone, there are 4 health jurisdictions. And within our region, which includes the MSAs, there are 12 health jurisdictions. So all 12 health jurisdictions have signed an MOU to make it a regional public health MOU that says that during an emergency event, we will share resources. Because of the need to share resources and to cross boundaries and being able to call up our neighbors in another county and say, could you help us? We're making sure that our trainings that are available are being offered to all of those within our Northeast Ohio region. Any training that we hold, we've taken it upon ourselves within the City of Cleveland to kind of be on the forefront of the training. That we've said we'll develop a lot of them. You come to us and we'll give it to you as a trainer, with the idea being that nobody's going to be trained differently. We're all going to be trained the same, so that when and if we need to execute that MOU and we say, we really need people to help us as safety officers or as pod managers, they're going to know already what we're expecting because we're going to have been trained that same way.
Now, besides city, county, and regional partners, the planners in Ohio have found that CRI has enabled many other partnerships outside the traditional public health realm.
You know, the partnership that's developed with public health and medicine through preparedness and by extension through CRI, I think has been important. There's been a separation for a long time as we've moved down parallel paths, I believe, looking at the issue of the hospitals and medicine taking care of individuals and public health looking at population-based services. And so what this does is to develop an integration there. Hospitals see the value of public health in helping them plan, and public health recognizes the existing expertise relative to infectious disease and response that hospitals have, particularly in a community like Greater Cleveland that has a very strong medical community. So I think that their existing expertise is important, and their willingness to come to the table to work with us is important, and that has strengthened the overall relationship. And I think that that's sort of an intangible that we hadn't realized would be a sort of a byproduct of this experience.
Additional partners that you may not be thinking about will include universities, large businesses. We even have an MOU or an agreement with a hospice agency, the Hospice of Western Reserve. They are a critical link to special populations such as nursing homes. They have relationships established with many local and regional nursing homes, and so it provides us a natural opportunity to those special populations through that partnership with the Hospice of Western Reserve. In order to establish these partnerships on a regional basis, I think it's critical that you have face-to-face meetings as well as accommodate wishes for conference calls. I think that having the City of Cleveland Health Department serve as that lead coordinator has been instrumental in providing an opportunity for us to pull together all these partners.
Well, I'd like to come back to the Strategic National Stockpile, or SNS, for just a minute. Dr. Besser, can you give us an idea of what SNS is all about?
Sure, Sharon. SNS is a national repository of antibiotics, chemical antidotes, antitoxins, life support medications, airway maintenance supplies, and medical surgical items. The SNS is designed to supplement and resupply state and local assets in the event of a national emergency anywhere and at any time within the U.S. or its territories. The mission of the Division of Strategic National Stockpile is to deliver critical medical assets to the site of a national emergency. The SNS stands ready for immediate deployment to any U.S. location in the event of a terrorist attack or a natural or technological disaster. However, the SNS deployment won't arrive without needed support. A Technical Advisory Response Unit, or TARU team, is comprised of emergency responders and logistics experts. The team and the initial SNS shipment are deployed simultaneously. This team provides advice and technical assistance regarding use of the SNS material.
But Dr. Besser, will the first shipment of SNS assets contain enough medication for everyone in the community?
Maybe not, Sharon. But SNS has contracted with certain vendors to supplement the stockpile as needed. This managed inventory can be tailored to meet your needs depending on the nature and scope of the threat.
So let me see if I understand. So at the CDC, the Division of Strategic National Stockpile, DSNS, is on constant readiness should that stockpile be needed.
That's right, Sharon. Not only are we ready to deploy, but we are constantly procuring and managing our inventory. We're also working with state, local, tribal, and federal agencies to prepare them to receive, distribute, and utilize SNS assets. We conduct operational research and program evaluation, and we're constantly educating and training state, local, tribal, and federal partners. In addition, we ensure accountability by integrating budget and performance.
All right, let me throw this back to you, Dr. Rob. Now, we talked about the CRI goal of dispensing medication to 100% of the population in 48 hours, but how can that be accomplished?
HHS recognizes the difficulty communities face in reaching this goal, and we have identified 5 possible methods of dispensing medications. We call these dispensing modalities. These modalities can be used in combination to reach the most people possible in a short time frame. These 5 modalities, which are in various states of development, are points of dispensing, or PODs, home delivery of medication by United States postal carriers, pre-deployed community-based caches of medication for emergency use, pre-event placement of medications as equipment for first responders, and pre-event placement of pharmaceuticals in individual households, or med kits. The first modality is the use of points of dispensing, or pods. Pods are temporary dispensing sites where people are screened and received medication. Your states and cities have already done a lot of work on developing their pods, and this is how most people will receive their medication. However, pods alone may not be sufficient to reach your entire population in 48 hours. So, in addition to points of dispensing, city planners may choose to use one or more additional modalities to supplement their pods. The second modality identified by HHS is known as the postal option. The postal option involves the residential delivery of one bottle of medication per household in pre-identified zip codes. Since it is only one bottle per household, family members will still have to report to a pod to receive the rest of their medication. The idea is to get the first pills in people while the pods are being set up. This is exactly what the planners in Cleveland found as they began putting together their postal option.
The United States Postal Service plan has been utilized as a supplement to our city's readiness initiative, the idea being that in that period of time while we're setting up our pods, the United States Postal Service can begin dispensing medications door to door to our residents. One of the biggest challenges that we've faced is that within the city of Cleveland, we have many zip codes that cross jurisdictional boundaries. And how do you overcome those jurisdictional boundaries when law enforcement personnel doesn't necessarily carry that law enforcement capability across those jurisdictional lines? And that's been a big challenge when working on the United States Postal Service plan. Because of that, we're working together with our county partners and then eventually our regional partners to develop MOUs between law enforcement in order to ensure that these cross-jurisdictional boundaries, when they do occur and when law enforcement does have to cross during an emergency event, we can maintain law enforcement control.
For the City Readiness Initiative and the United States Postal Service option, there are some building blocks that have to take place here. From the state's perspective, what we tried to do was to bring together the USPS folks with the city folks all on a conference call so everybody could air their opinions and that we could fully understand what we needed to do to move forward on the Postal Service option. Initially, we tried to go down building is very large. We tried to identify a broad area for the USPS option. What we ran into was a lot of cross-jurisdictional issues with law enforcement, primarily. Mutual aid wasn't built across the entire county or even multiple county area. We had to eventually step back, take a better look at really what we needed to do. What we ended up doing was to reduce the size of the USPS area to be more in the comfort level of the Cleveland Department of Public Safety's comfort level on what they could offer for security, law enforcement forces following every one of the mail carriers, as well as standing up the infrastructure for the points of dispensing. Once we got our hands around that, we were able to get the buy-in from the law enforcement side. We were able to create the security agreement for the Postal Service, and Cleveland now can move forward with the tactical planning portions of the USPS option.
The postal option presents formidable implementation challenges. As Mark Keeler said, for Ohio, one of those challenges was cross-jurisdictional issues associated with law enforcement. In fact, security in general has presented a major planning challenge for the postal option. Boston has collaborated with area law enforcement to develop a security plan that allows them to take advantage of the postal option.
Well, in order to take advantage of the U.S. Postal Service option, what we needed to do was to come up with a written plan for the Postal Service that would meet their security requirements. So it was kind of a step-by-step process for us. First, we had to identify for the Postal Service which particular zip codes we would want them to deliver to in this scenario. And so we said, well, every residential zip code in the city. So then the U.S. Postal Service came back to us and said, okay, based on your information that you've given us and based on the zip codes that you've given us, we believe that it will take X number of carriers to put together a plan to dispense medication on a one-time basis only to those zip codes. And so the Postal Service requirements for security was a 1-to-1 ratio for every postal carrier that was carrying medication to residential addresses. That postal carrier would require one armed and sworn guard. We all were taken aback by that at first, but when we really looked at those numbers, it turned out that because there was a strange twist to how we were looking at the Postal Service as a delivery team. And the reality is that they spend a part of each day sorting mail and then the rest of the day delivering mail. And so for this one-time only distribution option, our understanding was that the postal carriers involved would not be obviously sorting mail. So that would actually free up time on their schedules. So instead of there needing to be, let's say, 2 carriers for a particular neighborhood, for this one-time only distribution, they would only need 1. And so as a result, the actual numbers of postal carriers requiring an armed and sworn guard was actually less than what we considered at first. And so that was a pleasant surprise for us, and it really was a help in terms of helping our security planning team come up with written assurances that they would be able to provide that level of security. The Postal Service also requires that any of their staging areas where they would be keeping medication in order to in turn deliver it out to particular neighborhoods and to particular zip codes, they require that any place where that medication is being temporarily staged would require 2 armed and sworn guards. And so that was part of our security planning as well.
I hear a lot of planning going on around the postal option, but Dr. Robb, has anyone actually exercised this?
Well, as a matter of fact, Sharon, Seattle-King County Public Health Department, the Seattle Police Department, and the United States Postal Service, with assistance from Washington State Department of Health and the SNS, plan to conduct an operational drill covering 2 entire zip codes, or 36,000 households, on Veterans Day, Saturday, November 11. And I applaud their efforts.
Absolutely, that is a huge undertaking. Now, we have seen the advantages of the postal option, but John Jacob also realistically identified some of the disadvantages uncovered in Boston.
The Postal Service option really has a lot of great advantages to it, but there are some drawbacks to it that you really have to take into account. This is only 1 bottle of pills for every residential address. And so it's never going to be a standalone option for ensuring that everyone in your city or region has enough medication to go around. If there's more than 1 adult living in that house, then right there you don't have a 10-day course of medication, which is what we're striving for. So the Postal Service option really is something that needs to work in concert with other mass dispensing activities. I don't think that it really could be a standalone. So for the City of Boston, we look at the postal delivery option as a very good and very important component in our planning. We don't look at it as the main course, more as an appetizer really, in the sense that the backbone of our operation continues to be what we do best, which is the staffing and operation of clinics, of mass dispensing sites in neighborhoods all over the city. But we look at the postal option as a great way to hopefully to get medication out on a very quick basis to the residents of the City of Boston that would hopefully tend to allay any initial sense of panic and buy us time to staff up those clinics that I talked about. So for us, the Postal Service really is an important component, but it really is not a standalone component.
Well, in addition to the pods and the possible delivery of medications by the U.S. Postal Service, Dr. Robb, how else do you get pills in people?
The pre-deployment of community-based caches of pharmaceuticals for emergency use is another modality. This would be pre-positioned emergency stockpiles of medications in hospitals, community health centers, skilled nursing facilities, schools, prisons, or large corporations. There are several issues involved in the development of city stockpiles. One of these is medication expiration. However, HHS has been working with several communities to help resolve some of these issues. Another modality is pre-event dispensing of medication as equipment to first responders. This puts medication in the hands of personnel who will be involved in the first response, such as police, fire, and even in some cases, public health professionals. The pre-event placement of pharmaceuticals in individual households, or the med kit, is a modality that is currently under development. The concept is that individuals who wish to take personal precautions against bioterrorism would be able to acquire a package of properly prescribed antibiotics for every member of the household, store them securely until needed, and then use them in accord with guidance from local public health authorities. This idea is now being pilot tested in one city, St. Louis.
All right, thank you. Now, Dr. Besser said earlier that one of the CRI objectives is to institute a public information system that continually informs the public about mass antibiotic dispensing. John Jacob tells us about some of the dispensing issues covered in the Boston Public Information Plan.
The public communication, public information, risk messaging scenario that a CRI response would entail has lots of different challenges to it. It's very important to have consistent messaging across the board about if you are using sites, clinics, when those clinics are opening. If you are using the Postal Service option, ensuring that people understand exactly which zip codes are going to be delivered to. In Boston's case, we're using all of our zip codes because we're a relatively compact geographical area. So we have, in our risk communication plan for CRI, we really have made sure that all of our sites will open up at the same time. The public information or risk messaging challenges that would be involved in telling a certain segment of the population, whether geographically segmented or number of members in your family. If you have 2 or more members in your family, you go to a particular site at a particular time. We just feel that's really not going to be practical during a real-world CRI aerosolized anthrax release scenario. So our risk communication plan really is much more centered on a consistent opening time for all of our clinics and letting folks know that if we do indeed start to use the postal option, that every residential address in the city will receive 1 bottle of pills, which they should take accordingly.
All right. Now, Jean Popiak is a public health advisor in the Division of State and Local Readiness, DSLR, at the CDC's Coordinating Office for Terrorism Preparedness and Emergency Response. Now, one of her duties is to oversee funding and budget. So, Jean, can you tell us how DSLR is involved in CRI and give us some information on the CRI budget?
Certainly, Sharon. CDC's Division of State and Local Readiness manages the Public Health Emergency Preparedness Cooperative Agreement, which funds CRI. In the pilot year of the project, when there were just 21 cities in CRI, the program budget was $27 million. In this project period, which runs from August 31st, 2006 through August 30th, 2007, the budget was increased to $54 million when we increased to 72 metropolitan statistical areas, or MSAs, in CRI.
Jean, can you explain or give us some idea of how the funding works?
Sure. CDC awards federal CRI funds in the Public Health Emergency Preparedness Cooperative Agreement to state health departments. This funding is to be used for terrorism preparedness and emergency response.
All right, if you would, explain or tell us the difference between a cooperative agreement and a grant.
Many are familiar with funding through grants. A grant is a financial assistance mechanism in the form of money or direct assistance that's provided to carry out approved activities, and there's no substantial programmatic involvement with the recipient during the performance of the financially assisted activities. However, the cooperative agreement is different. It's a financial assistance agreement mechanism used in lieu of a grant when substantial federal programmatic involvement is anticipated.
So if I've got this right, in the case of CRI, these are cooperative agreements because a good bit of technical and programmatic assistance is necessary.
Yes. It's the responsibility of the recipient to work with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention to develop plans to receive, distribute, and dispense prophylaxis. Recipients must also ensure that all preparedness activities are coordinated and integrated at the state, regional, tribal, and local areas. They should address activities that relate to the CDC Cooperative Agreement within the existing framework of goals, outcomes, tasks, and measures required for response to bioterrorism and other public health emergencies.
All right, Jean, thanks. Now, in Ohio, planners have had to do just what she described. They are coordinating throughout the Northeast Ohio region. Here's a little bit more of the Ohio experience.
Initially, when City of Cleveland began the CRI project, we began to work very closely with them as they developed their plans. We had a chance then to learn as the city learned, and then to actually benefit from their experiences as they built out CRI, with the intent of moving it out into the county that surrounds Cleveland and ultimately into the region here in Northeast Ohio. We saw the plan as sort of cascading from the city that put substantial time into developing the plan and did a thorough review, that helped to build out the plan throughout the rest of Cuyahoga County, and all the while the intent of building the plan out throughout Northeast Ohio was in place, but all that initial work helped to make it easier as we begin to move out across the entire MSA. What we realized, I think, through the process of rolling out CRI, working closely with the City of Cleveland, is just how interrelated we are, not just with the city in response, but with the entire region. We've worked cooperatively in preparedness, but as we begin to build out the plans, the need for those plans to be seamless across the entire MSA became, I think, very apparent for us. So that was a challenge, but as we roll out over the next year, I think the existing work that's been done, I think will make things easier for the rest of the region as we go forward.
Jean, what kind of funding guidance can states expect from CDC?
Well, the states can expect the CDC to provide integration and coordination of federal funding for preparedness and monitor for adherence to all federal rules, regulations, and policies regarding cooperative agreements. Part of our responsibility includes facilitating tribal, military, international, Department of Homeland Security, and other federal agency efforts into public health preparedness, and also coordinating the public health preparedness responsibilities of the National Response Plan, or NRP, where CDC is the designated lead agency.
What specific guidance does CDC provide CRI recipients pertaining to how to create a budget?
Well, to begin with, CDC will review your work plan. For CRI cities that have received funding in the past, CDC will review your progress on last year's activities. Then we ask cities to determine what activities they plan to accomplish in the grant year and prioritize those activities. Mass prophylaxis dispensing and health communication messaging should be included among these activities. If you have any questions regarding what activities you should target, work with your assigned CDC project officer to help define your needs. Targeted funds may be allocated by the recipient cities within their own jurisdiction and, as appropriate, within adjacent jurisdictions that make up the MSA.
But we all know that most budgets come with some form of a restriction, so what are the allowed and the disallowed items attached to CRI funding?
Well, let's start with the disallowed items. Disallowed items include inventory tracking software, vehicles, medication for use on the general population, and medical supplies for use on the general population. The allowed items include prophylaxis for health department first responders and their families. This is acceptable with the approval of the project officer in collaboration with the DSNS Program Services Consultant. Also, any equipment purchased with CRI funds must be interoperable with equipment purchased with funds from the Department of Homeland Security grant for first responders.
And the project officer is the CDC person that recipients will have the most interaction with. I mean, what will the project officer actually look for in a budget?
Well, the first thing the project officer will do is check to see that every line item in the budget has justification as to how the allocation relates to the city's Readiness initiative, and then an explanation for how that cost was determined. For certain allocations, particularly contracts, additional information is needed, such as the name of the contractor, the scope of work, an itemized budget, the period of performance, and justification. I urge all recipients to forge a good working relationship with their project officer. Talk to them and get all the details you need. Both the project officer and the consultant will review the budget and answer any questions that arise.
All right, thank you, Jean. We're going to turn now to Commander Patricia Pettis, who's been sitting here so patiently through the program waiting to go on. Patty, you are the CRI coordinator for the Division of Strategic National Stockpile, or DSNS. Now, can you tell us what roles DSNS play in CRI planning?
Certainly, Sharon. One of the ways DSNS helps prepare the various players in CRI is by providing technical assistance and training. We offer SNS preparedness training for new state and local SNS coordinators, both here in Atlanta and also out in the States. We offer a 2-day workshop focused on mass antibiotic dispensing and a 1-day workshop about public information and communication during a mass antibiotic dispensing campaign. We also publish version 10 of the SNS Preparedness and Planning Guide. In addition, we offer technical assistance by providing each state and CRI city with a program services consultant. These consultants provide technical assistance and program oversight on a regular basis and serve as CDC subject matter experts. The program services consultants work closely with project area planners to ensure that the needs of the CRI cities are being met. They also help identify and address any concerns related to SNS planning and implementation, as outlined in the guidance. One of the most important roles of the program services consultant is to provide consistent interpretation of the guidance outlined in version 10 of the SNS Planning and Preparedness Guide. The consultants provide our partners at the state and local level with a better understanding of how to write their SNS plans and allocate funds to those to support those plans. Program services consultants spend a lot of time in one-on-one in the field with their constituents, acting as liaisons between the planners and the federal government regarding CRI. While in the field, consultants perform site visits, attend planning meetings, and promote networking with key stakeholders. In addition, the constituents consultants provide off-site consultation through conference calls, emails, and sharing related materials and publications. However, technical assistance also comes in other ways from DSNS. For example, DSNS has completed the 6th in a series of satellite broadcasts about mass antibiotic dispensing. These broadcasts are available online at the Public Health Training Network website and on CD-ROM or VHS from your program services consultant. DSNS keeps our partners in the loop through a listserv, which allows us to get updates out immediately via email to everyone on our list. SNS also maintains the SNS extranet as a convenient resource for our partners. It's a password-protected website that offers a centralized location for SNS information and links to other pertinent resources. In addition, DSNS has held several national meetings and is planning more workshops to provide updates and facilitate networking amongst all state and local planners for CRI. In fact, we have formed relationships with 2 national not-for-profit organizations, the National Association of County and City Health Officials, NACCHO, and the Association for State and Territorial Health Officials, ASTO, to assist us in sponsoring these workshops and to provide written reference materials to support state and local planning. Additionally, although we are presenting the CRI Executive Brief as a broadcast today, we will continue to offer CRI Executive Briefs in person upon request. DSNS also assists state and local planners by conducting regular progress reviews. These reviews are important because they guide planners in developing detailed action plans related to CRI funding. The reviews identify gaps in planning and help planners to establish priorities for making progress as they move toward meeting the CRI goal. In order to ensure consistency across state lines and city limits, we have developed new review tools that contain a numerical scoring system to help planners further track their progress.
Thank you. Commander, based on your experience working closely with so many metropolitan areas, how should they approach the development of CRI plans?
First, let me say that plans are never finished. They are in a constant state of revision. To be successful in developing a comprehensive plan, it's imperative that planners obtain multi-agency buy-in and participation from all governmental response agencies, starting from the governor on down.
Well, it sounds like DSNS is highly involved in the CRI planning at both the state and the local level. Can you sum up the role of your organization for us?
Absolutely, Sharon. The role of DSNS can be summarized as one of collaboration and partnership. In our experience working closely with state and local planners, DSNS has learned many lessons through exercising, training, and evaluating cities participating in CRI. The information we obtain this way can be shared with all of our partners so that everyone can be successful in achieving the ultimate goal of saving lives.
Commander, thank you. Now, we've touched on the issue of security several times in this broadcast as well. And Dr. Robb, I'm going to throw it back to you. Can you help us understand the role that law enforcement will actually play in the city's Readiness Initiative?
Certainly, Sharon. A comprehensive security plan is an integral part of any CRI action plan. Law enforcement plays a tremendous role, and their help is vital to our success. There are 5 elements of a comprehensive security plan: maintaining civil order, keeping streets passable, protecting the pods, managing the pod queues, and escorting postal workers. Maintaining civil order is of paramount importance to mass antibiotic dispensing. The presence of uniformed officers will calm fears and promote order inside the pod. Additionally, law enforcement officers can secure the medications both inside the pods and at any area where medication is stored in the state. Potential security resources include local law enforcement, contract guards, state police, the National Guard, and Department of Defense units.
As Dr. Robb mentioned, there will be a lot of security focused around those pods. So let's go back to John Jacob of Boston just to see how planners in that city actually handled pod security.
The backbone of our dispensing plan for the city's Readiness Initiative is the staffing and operation of up to 50 mass dispensing sites located in public schools and community centers located around the city. The police department, when they came to the table to start our security planning with us, they realized that owing to that fact, they should probably break their planning up into 3 separate and distinct areas. The first is the security for the mass dispensing sites themselves and the medication within those sites and traffic control around those sites. The second is the security of the medication going from the receipt, staging, and storage facility into the city and to the dispensing sites. And the third is security for any U.S. Postal Service carriers who would be assisting us during the initial stages of a response by delivering medication to residential addresses. Based on the intensity and the length, the sheer length of the planning process that has been ongoing so far, we're very confident that our security will be adequate for the dispensing site scenario that we've come up with for City's Readiness Initiative.
Now, Chicago also realized that including law enforcement in their pod planning would help both planners and police realize the security needs of the pods. So let's hear from Michael Robbins about partnering with law enforcement for pod security planning.
The first thing we did once we had our big rollout meeting in our CRI planning was to identify all of our what most people call pods. We call dispensing vaccination centers, DVCs. And we have over 60 DVCs identified in Chicago. They're sensitive to the population density throughout the city. We realized what we needed to do was to survey them, not from only a health perspective, but from a security perspective. And in the name of efficiency, we realized it would be best to do our security and our health survey at the same time and partner together. And physically, we went out to every single 60 plus, actually, because we have redundancy sites, all of the DVCs, and to lay out and to chart out the operations layout. And we have 2 police officers per survey perform a security survey of the facility and a perimeter survey. And to then take a map and to chart out exactly where police officers were needed at each point within the high school gymnasium, for example, knowing, though, what the health needs were. So if they did it blindly, the police wouldn't realize that the drugs were being stored in this or that room, and so they wouldn't, so they had to be together. So now you had police and health people working together, which was interesting.
Well, Mike Robbins mentions partnering with city police, but Dr. Besser, what about state law enforcement?
Well, Sharon, state law enforcement will be engaged in securing SNS assets as they're transported to and from states' receiving, staging, and storing site. It's important to involve all law enforcement agencies in your planning and your exercises so that all roles are clearly defined before an event occurs.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Robb, let me go back to you. We've talked a lot about partnerships today. Now that has to be, I'm guessing, a critical component of CRI.
It certainly is, Sharon. Identifying your partners early in the process and including them in planning from the beginning is important to success. Collaboration and partnerships must occur at the state and local level for CRI to be successful. And it's up to each recipient to identify those partners and bring them to the table. In addition, partnering with agencies in multiple jurisdictions can help you move CRI out into a larger area to save even more lives.
The city of Cleveland proper is approximately 450,000 people, but we're part of Cuyahoga County, which is 1.3 million people, and we're part of a region considered Northeast Ohio that's over 2 million people. And now our CRI project encompasses the entire region. So we work with other health departments, other municipalities, and a lot of established relationships have been developed and have grown because of what we've been doing with CRI.
One of the greatest challenges of expanding a CRI project beyond a single city is the realities of multi-jurisdictions. You have multiple political subdivisions, you have multiple police and fire, health department jurisdictions, and trying to get everyone on the same page and reading off the same playbook is an immense challenge.
For cross-jurisdictional types of planning, the infrastructure that Ohio already had was a regional approach. That already set the stage for local health department to work outside of political boundaries, outside of city boundaries, outside of county boundaries, and even outside of hospital jurisdictions. So they were already instrumental in the relationship that was there for cross-jurisdictional issues. It brought together those partners to understand how they fit into this plan for the City Readiness Initiative and what their role really would be.
I think as you start off with a single city in a CRI project, it is critical to understand that the response is much larger than a single city. And the City of Cleveland and the leadership at the City of Cleveland, from the very beginning of CRI Year 1, expanded the CRI project by including Cuyahoga County as well as the regional partners. And I think we had an opportunity to go further along in our preparedness efforts because of that decision.
Well, CRI has been in effect since 2004. Dr. Robb, what lessons have we learned in that time?
What we've learned is that in order to be successful, a high level of support is needed from top federal officials, and we must sustain your funding to improve stability. In addition, it is imperative to have the involvement of top state and local political leadership.
Well, Table 1 CRI cities have learned a few things as well. Now, we've heard cities go from being overwhelmed to feeling more prepared to handle any disaster. Matt Carroll and Terry Allen have some advice for other planners about what they've learned.
When I think about the things that we learned and figured out along the way in doing the CRI process, a couple of things come to mind when I think about other communities starting to do it. One is to not be overwhelmed by the requirements of CRI. It does seem very difficult at the beginning, but it's something as you dig into it, it definitely is quite doable as time goes on. Another thing that I think when you look at it, you should consider what a great resource it can be for you as a city or as a region. It truly adds to your capacity as a preparedness entity, as a community that has to be responsive to its citizens. It gives you this great resource and this great capacity that you maybe did not have before.
The most important thing that local health departments can do as they begin to tackle the challenges of CRI is to not think within their existing boundaries. there are over, or almost, I should say, 3,000 health departments, local health departments in the United States. And if we begin to think about the jurisdictions, just solely the jurisdictions that we cover, we're missing sort of the forest for the trees. We've got to begin to think about the fact that these borders blur in the case of an emergency.
And perhaps the best news is that CRI can make a difference in all your emergency preparedness efforts, as we hear from Mark Keeler and Matt Kaler.
CRI has made an incredible improvement in the readiness of Ohio, as well as the city of Cleveland and the surrounding areas. It was a huge undertaking, and it was almost an insurmountable task when we first looked at it. Looking at the elements of the stockpile program, looking at the 14 critical capacities, and dividing those up with the roles and responsibilities, both locally and with the state, puts it more into perspective.
The way we look at it in the Cleveland Department of Public Health, really, it's before CRI and after CRI, because things are much different now. CRI has really been the foundation of our preparedness activities. The skills and the programs and the resources that we've been able to put together and the organizing we've been able to do has prepared us for a variety of other concerns and problems, and really given us the confidence to feel that we are prepared for emergency if it does come up.
Well, we're about to wind down this portion of the program, but don't go anywhere. We're getting ready to move into the question and answer session. Now, I want to remind you that the website for this broadcast lists all the resources we've talked about today and more. Now, the address is www.cdc.gov/phtn/webcast/CRI. And there's additional information available on the SNS extranet. Now, the extranet is password protected, so contact your state and local SNS planners to obtain the password and the user ID for the extranet. We're all set. Let's begin our question and answer session. And the first question is for you, Dr. Rob. We are a new planning city and have to make the decision of starting either at the city level the first year or including the whole MSA. What would you suggest?
We have no magic answer for that one. It will depend very much on what you think can work in your city or metropolitan area. In general, though, when new cities are uncertain about that, we recommend a step-by-step approach, starting with the urban core and working out. Our rationale for that is that much of the basis for CRI, as you heard in the broadcast, is the risk and the consequences that large metropolitan areas face. And if in general a city begins with its most populated area and works from there, that has the greatest probability of producing a local solution that will work and will be effective for public health preparedness.
All right, thank you. We also have a question, and before we go any further, let me just tell all of the panel members, if at any time you'd like to weigh in on something that the other person says, feel free. We'll keep it informal, and that way we can get as much information in as possible. Dr. Besser, we have this question that just came in for you. How does a CRI response compare to all hazards planning? I mean, according to this viewer, it seems like an anthrax response would look nothing like, for example, a hurricane response.
That's a great question, Sharon. When it comes to planning and responding, our approach is that the efforts that are undertaken planning for CRI will contribute to any response that you undertake in your area. This is an all hazards approach. So whether you are planning for a worst case anthrax attack or you're planning for pandemic flu, the efforts, the relationships, the partnerships that you develop are all going to contribute to a system that is able to respond better to anything that comes its way.
All right, thank you. We have a question now that was faxed in from Arkansas. The viewer wants to know, how does the CRI plan keep from duplicating efforts of CNS and MMRS? Who would like to jump on that? Dr. Rob?
I think for those who don't know the initials, it's the Metropolitan Medical Response System funded by the Department of Homeland Security. That program for years has encouraged various kinds of local systems, including addressing some of the questions around prophylaxis. When we began the City's Readiness Initiative, we reached out and included the participants in the Metropolitan Medical Response Systems And by providing substantially more funding than was available for that program, we think we have jump-started in a significant way these programs. So they are indeed complementary. They build upon one another. And we've been pleased at how well a number of the cities have integrated the various sources of funding.
Dr. Besser, I know you have weighed in heavily on the SNS. Would you like to weigh in on this question?
Yeah, I think it is a great question. You know, once again, as part of MMRS, there are relationships that are being developed. As part of CRI, there are relationships being developed. It's our hope that these are the same people who are going to be working together. And so they're building a system that is integrated and that can work together. I think for too long, pockets of money have been separated and programs have been separated. What CRI is trying to do is pull groups together so that public health is taking a leadership role across the community.
All right, thank you. Anyone else want to weigh in on that? Or?
Sure, Sharon. I'd like to just mention that. Just remember, too, that MMRS funds are for first responders and, again, comes through the Department of Homeland Security. So for that reason, you may want to focus on your first responders that belong to a lot of your public safety agencies. The funds that come from the cooperative agreement at CDC are focusing on the public health first responders and their families. So again, complementing, networking, and working together to make coverage for everyone.
All right, and since we're talking about money, I have this question that came in for Eugene. How much funding can be retained by the state?
Well, actually, Sharon, there is no set percentage of funding that the state should utilize to help the cities in the Cities Readiness Initiative. CDC strongly recommends that most of the funds, the lion's share of the funds, should be utilized at the local level.
All right, Jean, thank you. You know, we've spent a lot of time today talking about the Postal Service, and Dr. Robb, a question has come in for you, which we had actually discussed earlier among ourselves. Why is there so much emphasis on the Postal Service in the CRI program, and are we required to use this?
Thanks, Sharon. I'm glad to discuss that one. To put this in context, as we've underscored in a number of ways in the broadcast today, our primary objective is to help the municipalities become as nearly self-sufficient as they possibly can, because they are going to be the ones on the scene when the incident occurs. We'll do everything we can through the funding, through the technical assistance, to ensure that those pod networks and other local capabilities are as strong as they can be. But we can also easily envision scenarios where the federal government will need to help. And other than the rapid provision of material from the SNS, any traditional response that involves the federal government mobilizing people from somewhere else and bringing them to your city will require days. And as we stress, time is the enemy. And those days that go by before the federal government could bring hands-on assistance in the traditional way create the certainty that people will die unnecessarily. The United States Postal Service is a federal asset, but it's there in every community in the United States. It's the way that the federal government can help more rapidly than any other capability we have. As we stressed, it's an easy concept to say, but an extremely difficult idea to implement. So we continue to promote it strongly. We're going to work in every way we can with our state and local colleagues to explore the idea, drill it, test it, establish its viability in different contexts and in different forms. But we think it's the way that the federal government can be helpful immediately in a severe public health emergency. As we've said many times, we need the help of the communities now if we're going to be able to help you then through the Postal Service.
Dr. Robb, what were you, I believe earlier in the show you said we are going to have a test of this option November 11th, correct?
That's correct. In Seattle, Washington, on Veterans Day, we'll be doing our first live, large-scale operational drill. This has been a very exciting effort, and I applaud the leadership that's come from our colleagues in the United States Postal Service, from Seattle-King County Public Health and the Seattle Police Department, as well as the valuable support from the Washington State Department of Health and from the SNS here at CDC. The idea is to put to the test whether we can, in fact, deliver, in this case, simulated bottles of pills and information to 36,000 households within a single day. Theoretically, we can. We're certain that like any drill, it won't go perfectly. We'll learn a lot from doing it. But we think it's a watershed event for establishing a better understanding of what's possible and what's not with the direct residential delivery of pharmaceuticals.
All right, Dr. Robb, thank you. I have a question here that you all may want to weigh in on. The viewer says, why can't we just focus on our city population? The MSA planning seems to reach too far outside city boundaries. I have a feeling you all disagree with that.
Well, I'll take the first part of that answer, Sharon. The cities, while they are the target and should be the initial starting point of planning for CRI, in today's age where we all commute from work to home, most of our communities are where our families are. So it's important to consider the metropolitan areas or the MSAs as part of your planning because they will be affected.
Dr. Besser, I saw you.
I think that's right on target. You know, if you look at an area like New York City, the vast majority of people who are there during the day are not there at night. They're going back to other communities around the area. And so if you're not planning with the surrounding states, you're not going to be able to meet the needs of your population. You're not going to be able to determine if there's an attack, whether it's occurring at night when people are in their residential areas, or during the day when they're at their place of work. And so we have to plan for that for both contingencies.
All right. Interesting points. Patty, the next question I have is for you, actually. How will cities be, no, thanks for you. How will cities be assessed this year?
I can answer that. This year we have, as I mentioned, we've incorporated a new review tool. Previously we used an assessment tool with a green amber rating. We've taken some recommendations from various agencies and have worked with RAND Corporation to implement a new review tool that is a numerical scoring system. Now the Table 1 CRI cities will continue to be assessed on an annual basis as they have been. The new Table 2 cities, which are the 36 cities that are largely, hopefully, in presence today, will have their first review with their program service consultant within 90 days of today's executive briefing.
All right, Patty, thank you. We have a question that just came in, and I'm going to start with Dr. Robb because I remember you touching on this a bit, and then anyone else who would like to weigh in, feel free. It was said that planning for anthrax will help for planning for pandemic flu. Does this mean that we will need to provide prophylaxis for pandemic flu in 48 hours?
Excellent question, and the answer is no. What we've tried to stress is that many of the planning efforts driven by the anthrax scenario will have benefit for other scenarios. But we shouldn't make the mistake of assuming that the particular demands of the anthrax scenario will therefore be the same particular demands of other scenarios. The pandemic influenza will present its own special challenges. Some of that will be compounded by the fact that while we expect to have increasing quantities of antiviral drugs available at the time a pandemic begins, we are guaranteed to have only tiny quantities of what we call pre-pandemic vaccine available, and by definition have no vaccine against the strain that is emerging and causing the pandemic, and we won't have that for the order of 6 months. So therefore the challenges for mass prophylaxis become very different in the details. But nevertheless, to the extent that we need to reach out to large numbers of people or components of areas, the fundamental pod infrastructure, some of the other modalities we've talked about are applicable, and we've urged people, while thinking about the highly specific and demanding parts of the anthrax scenario, to step back and see that much of it, in fact, is of general use.
All right, Dr. Robb, thank you. We now have someone on the phone, Jeff from Texas. You have a question, and who do you have that question for?
Yes. This is Jeff from Houston. My question is, where is the medication that the post office would be dispensing coming from? My understanding is that the SNS 12-hour push package will prophylax 300,000 people, and the VMI will not arrive for 24 to 36 hours.
Dr. Besser and Dr. Robb both, I know you deal with the stockpile. You're very familiar with the postal plan. Perhaps you could both weigh in on that question. We'll start with you, Dr. Besser.
Sure. As I said during the early part of the broadcast, the SNS stockpile, the initial pushback, is not expected to meet the entire needs of the community. The vendor-managed inventory, which would follow that, would be there to address the additional population needs. Clearly, there will be time required to set up the points of dispensing, and the pushback will be able to get that started. The material that will be coming to the Postal Service, and correct me all if I'm wrong, will be coming from the stockpile as well. That is something that needs to be worked out as part of the planning process to ensure that if the postal option is adopted in your community, that the means for the material to get to the Postal Service are in place and that it's been fully exercised.
All right, thank you. Dr. Robb, do you need to weigh in on that? Or?
Well, just to add to that, to stress Dr. Besser's point, the material will be coming one way or the other from the Strategic National Stockpile, whether it's coming through push package or vendor-managed inventory. In the cities that are the furthest advanced now in their planning for the postal option, such as Seattle and Boston and Philadelphia, we're looking at a variety of models. In general, the starting model is to view the receipt, storage, and staging warehouse, the so-called RSS warehouse, as the point of interaction between the SNS material and the Postal Service. But we recognize there are a number of other options possible, and as we get more experience in the field with the pioneering cities, we'll shape that accordingly.
All right, thank you. Good answers. We have a question here that's been faxed from West Virginia. I think, Dr. Robb, you would probably, we'll start with you. They want to discuss the anticipated plans for ongoing CRI funding for Table 2 cities. Should we plan on this remaining at the current level for several years, or is it anticipated to increase or decrease? This will help us better develop initial budgets. You may all actually like to weigh in on that.
Well, I'll start just by saying that, as we've indicated in a number of ways today, this is a very high priority for the CDC particularly, and for the Department of Health and Human Services in general. In fact, under the National Response Plan and the National Preparedness Goal, mass prophylaxis is public health priority number one. So we are committed, within the resources made available to us each year by the Congress, to making sure that we make a substantial impact on this level of preparedness.
And if I could weigh in on
Please
that.
do.
As a project officer, we like to see that states and the cities prioritize the various activities that they have, that they plan to do in case there's an increase or decrease in funding. They are ready to go. It doesn't hurt to do a 3-year plan as to what you want to do in case things do change.
All right, Jean, thank you very much. We have a caller now from Maryland. Deborah in Maryland. Go ahead. Welcome.
Yes, hi, thank you. You spoke about the dispensing modalities, and one was the pre-deployed cash to community-based groups such as nursing homes and schools. Are you actually talking about us pushing the medication to those groups once the SNS arrives, or actually having those groups or purchase the caches beforehand to have them on hand, which would seem to be quite a funding nightmare?
Dr. Besser, you want to start?
Sure. The pre-deployed caches of antibiotics is one of the 5 modalities. Each community is going to need to look at their own situation and determine what works best. There's been some creative approaches in some communities working with businesses to determine whether a business is a large employer is an appropriate site for establishing a cache. But there is no one-size-fits-all when it comes to this. As was said earlier in the program, there are challenges that are posed by community-based caches in terms of expiration dates on medications, needing to rotate medications. And these are things that we need to explore and learn from. With medications that are under federal control, there's a shelf life extension program that's able to allow longer shelf life for medications that we have stockpiled. There are communities that are exploring whether that can be extended in any way. If that were to occur, that might make the idea of more community-based caches more viable.
Very complex issue, which is why obviously you continue to do these shows. I mean, this is not something that is going to occur overnight. I know, Dr. Robb, you've talked about this a great deal. Would you like to add something?
Yes, actually, it's more straightforward than it might seem. For hospitals and other healthcare entities, already one of our other agencies, the Health Resources and Services Administration, which provides a cooperative agreement for hospital-based preparedness, allows this expenditure as an allowable cost. So we from the beginning have encouraged hospitals and other healthcare entities to have a local cache to protect not only the employees but the patients during the first day or two of an incident, make them as nearly self-sufficient and not immediately dependent upon a pod network as they otherwise might be. The similar concept holds for example, Fortune 500 companies, virtually all of whom have an occupational medicine system, as well as other entities that have occasion to have some form of infrastructure for at least low acuity health care for their employees. Moreover, for some of these drugs, we're talking as little as 4 cents a pill. So these are not huge outlays, especially if we're thinking about enough pills for only a day or two, rather than thinking of a large cache. So we will continue to promote this as we think it's a desirable complement, taking the pressure off the pods, making as many institutions within the community as nearly self-sufficient for a day or two until the public health system can be mobilized and put into place.
All right, Doctor, thank you. And Commander, I know this is something you've dealt with a great deal as well.
Yes, Sharon. As a consultant myself in the past, I was amazed at how many states had agencies, whether they were profit, non-for-profit, wanting to step forward and contribute to these pre-deployment caches. You know, you have to think about the grants that are currently in place. As Dr. Robb mentioned, we also mentioned the MMRS caches. But there are also agencies out there like pharmacies, like drug companies, who want to serve their country in a patriotic sense, and they're devoted to supporting state and local planners in ways such as providing medication, or a pharmaceutical company might be able to rotate stock for them at no cost. So these are things that come from networking and sitting at the table, exchanging those business cards and planning before the event.
All right, thank you very much. We have one more question here from Jean. You always get the money questions. What can be done to expedite funding to local jurisdictions?
Sharon, we understand that the locals want to get their money as soon as possible so that they can move forward with their activities. Let me think. I guess the best thing that could happen is the state should assure that they have provided CDC with a budget and that CDC has approved it. The next thing that should happen is that the states should look at their internal fiscal requirements and barriers and assure that those have been addressed. Then we will work closely with the consultants from DSNS and assure that the money has gone from the state to the local level. We will continue to monitor that.
Got to take care of those local folks.
Absolutely.
All right, Jean, thank you. We have another question in that they want to address to everyone. Why do you call this the City's Readiness Initiative when the funding and the planning occurs at the county level? Who would like to start with that one? Dr. Robb, you look like you're chomping at the bit.
It's a question we get frequently. The answer, of course, varies across the country depending on how local public health departments are organized. But in general, we use city as a shorthand for capturing the notion that it's the population that's the surrogate for the risk, and it's the surrogate for the consequences. And therefore, whatever is done needs to take into account the special vulnerabilities of that urban core. As we've indicated in the broadcast, we encourage broadening that as makes sense in the various regions, we'll provide as much of the way of ideas and technical assistance as we can, but at the end of the day, the folks in the local region are better positioned than anyone else to understand what's the best local public health solution.
All right, thank you. Commander, anything to add?
No, he's
right.
fine.
Yeah. I can say you're going, yep, go ahead.
I think Dr. Rob covered it very well. Each area is going to be different. Cities Readiness Initiative is a nice, easy way to describe the program. But now that the CRI is in all 50 states, we're going to see very different pictures of what CRI looks like. When you look at many of the rural states, the population centers are not very great. But what we learn from the activities there, I think, will really help the whole area of countermeasure distribution and dispensing for all of our scenarios. In some areas, the county is the main purveyor of public health, but in others, it's not. So it is no one size fits all, but it is a catchy name.
All right, well, thank you. And as you said, this is an ever-evolving program. So we have a question that was faxed in from Connecticut. What consideration has been given to including antibiotics and other medications and vaccines in the shelf life extension program to allow more forward placement of material? I know you had mentioned that, Dr. Besser, so if you'd like to start, and then someone else can weigh in if they'd like.
Sure. There are many products that are in the shelf life extension program that are held in federal control, and I'm aware of some pilot activities in the Boston area to look at shelf life extension for products that are under the control of public health. Beyond that, I'm not aware, and maybe some of the others here are aware of other products that are being considered for shelf life extension in other areas. These programs, the shelf life extension, are extremely labor intensive and they're expensive. And so we need to look at creative ways of supporting those, but also ensuring that the products, wherever they're stored, are going to be effective when they need to be used.
All right, thank you. Dr. Rob, I know you had talked about it a bit. Is there anything you want to add?
No, I think Dr. Besser summarized it very well.
Oh, I love it when people agree like that. Okay, we also have a question here for Commander Pettis. How do we find out more about SNS training, and how do you sign up?
Well, Sharon, I talked a little bit about the venues of training that we offer through SNS. The best way to learn more about it and to express your interest is to contact your state and local SNS planner, or if you have contact information for your state program services consultant, that would be another avenue. Be sure to look for opportunities on our listserv and our extranet. We often post any available training as well.
And that is important. There is so much information out there on your websites, so anybody who needs information can access those. And of course, this broadcast is archived, so you can pull it up again if you'd like. I would like to thank all of the panel members here. Dr. Rob, it's been a pleasure to work with you. Commander Pettis, I loved saying your name. And Jean Podiak, it's great to work with you. And Dr. Besser, always good to see you again. It's been a joy to work with you. And thanks to everyone who called or sent in a fax. I think we've shared some great information today. And finally, if you'd like to find out more about upcoming public health training network courses, visit the PHTN website at www.cdc.gov/PHTN. I'd like to take this opportunity to again thank all of our panel members, Commander Pettis and Jean Poviak, Dr. Richard Besser, and of course, not least, not last, Dr. Rob. Thank you all for sharing your valuable information with us. I especially want to thank you, our audience, for joining us for this special broadcast, Cities Readiness Initiative, a national priority. This is Sharon Collins. I'm wishing you a great day from Atlanta. Thanks for joining us.